Hey, book community. Well, today I'm going to be doing something different for me. Well, it's going to be my first book tag. So Ben from Bingus Gone has tagged me in his most recent book series tag video, and I appreciate him doing that. And I'm going to talk a little bit about some of my book series that I have. Some I have read, some I have not read. So the way this is going to be looking at standalones, duologies, trilogies, tetralogy, pentalogy, hexalogy, heptalogy, octology, ennealogy, decalogy, and then a mega series, books above 10, series above 10 books. So some of these words are new for me, as Ben said they were for him. But anyway, I've got them numbered 1 through 10, so maybe I won't get confused. Anyway, these are supposed to be books that fit within that scope, maybe that you've read, but I've not read, everything that I read doesn't fit into that category. So may not, some of these may be books that I have read or series that I have read, and some of them will be ones that I am anticipating to read. So anyway, let's get started. First of all, favorite standalone. Now, this proved, not only this, several of these categories, but this category proved to be difficult because as I went over my last year, a little more than a year of my reading, I realized that I really haven't read that many standalones. I read a lot of nonfiction. It goes along with my profession, which I'm a pastor, and so I read a lot of nonfiction. And so I consider that, I guess you could say, standalones. But when it comes to my fantasy and fiction and even science fiction reading, I have most of what I read are put into series, books that are in series. So I have read a few, so I'm going to talk about some of my favorites. So the first book, as I've said in the past, I'm new at this being a constant reader lifestyle. Anyway, so last September when I picked up The Lord of the Rings for the first time, another book that I picked up that month was a book by an author that I was hearing a lot about at the time, and I thought, well, it may be worth giving a try. And his name was Brandon Sanderson. And the particular book, I'm sorry about the shaking, and the particular book that I picked up was Elantris. Now, I had no idea at the time that this was actually his first novel, the first in the Cosmere, and his, I believe, his first book that was published. Anyway, so this is one that I picked up, and I really enjoyed it. Now, my relationship with Sanderson books over the past year is a little strange. I've read a few of his standalones. I've read Elantris. I've read Warbreaker. I've read The Emperor's Soul. Those are the 3 standalones that I've read from him so far. And to be honest with you, I know people say that Elantris would usually be his weakest book, but it's probably my favorite of everything I've read from Sanderson at this point. Now, I'll also say this. I'm probably not the best place to go for your Sanderson material, though I'm going to try to read more Sanderson in the future. At this point, nothing I've read has just wowed me to a great extent as some other things have. Everything's been good. Now, don't get me wrong. Everything that I've read by Sanderson has been good, but nothing has just blew me away yet. The best things about it is what everybody talks about, the Sanderlanche, where it goes really fast at the end. That's always great. Can't complain about that. But I would say of the books that I've read by Sanderson at this point, now I've showed you the 3 books that I've read by him, 3 standalones. I've also read the first book of the Mistborn trilogy. Everything's been good. Nothing has been what I would consider the best book I've ever read. But of everything that I've read by Sanderson so far, Elantris, it just came at a good time for me, and I enjoyed it the most. So that would be my first book on our standalone. Well, that and Warbreaker, as I've already showed you, that would be another standalone. Also, a Graveyard book by Neil Gaiman. Now, I talked about this on my top 10 books, favorite books. This was, I believe, number 10, and it's on there for a reason. It's my only Neil Gaiman read at this time. I plan on reading more. In fact, I'm sitting here looking across the room at my other bookshelf at American Gods. I've heard a lot about that, so that may be hopefully a book that I can read in the future. But this was a wonderful book, a wonderful standalone, very easy to read, very short compared to all of these fantasy books we generally read. This is less than 300 pages, but a very, very good book, kind of a retelling of The Jungle Book. So there is another standalone. Also, I don't really know that this is all fantasy. These has to be all fantasy. So another book that I would count as a favorite standalone of mine would be the first Stephen King book that I read, Salem's Lot. Now, in the last several years, last 10, 15 years, the vampires that we've seen coming out of books and movies, well, they're not the good old-fashioned vampires that we all love. But this takes us back to real, true blue vampires, scary vampires, dark atmosphere. You're not safe. They're not looking to date you, they're looking to eat you. So anyway, this takes me back to that. That was a wonderful standalone by Stephen King. And so that would be my standalones. Now, moving on to duologies. I realized that I haven't read any duologies. In fact, I really couldn't name many duologies. I had to look some up to see, and most of what I'm finding in duologies is YA, and I really haven't read much YA, to be honest with you. But I did find Six of Crows, and I've heard that duology is good, and that's one that hopefully I'll get to in the future, maybe as an anticipated duology. Also, something else that I'm not sure if this counts as a duology, but there are two books that were released basically back to back. In my April wrap up, I told you that I read Stephen King's Desperation, a chilling book, thriller, horror, a lot of good stuff here. But then he also released The Regulators with it. Now, I've not read this yet. Hopefully this will come pretty soon. I've not read this yet, but I'm not sure if you would call that a duology, because they're kind of meant to be together. You can look and see they look very similar. In fact, I would say one of the main reasons that I first bought this, aside from it being Stephen King, is just how the artwork on these books are. So anyway, I don't know if that counts as a duology, but I'm counting it. So let's move on to trilogy. You're going to be surprised. You're going to be shocked at what my trilogy is. But it is what it is. If I have to give a favorite trilogy, this is going to be my favorite trilogy. The Lord of the Rings, J.R.R. Tolkien, amazing, amazing, amazing. But that's not all. Another trilogy that I would add on this would be Mortal Techniques, Rob J. Hayes. Never Die was his first book. Pawn's Gambit, I read it last month, was his second. I have not got to the third yet, but I plan on reading it. And already book 1 and book 2 have been amazing. I have no doubt that book 3 is going to be amazing. So there's another wonderful trilogy. Today I actually finished the second book of the Warlord Chronicles, which is a trilogy by Bernard Cornwell, and Enemy of God. And just as I've said with the Never Die series, book 1 was great. Book 2 was amazing. Absolutely no book 2 syndrome there. And so I look forward to moving on to the third book in that trilogy. In fact, I have that right here, the Warlord Chronicles. I look forward to moving on to the third book of that, which is Excalibur. How did I have to look for that? Anyway, I love the color coordination there. Wonderful trilogy by Bernard Cornwell. At least so far, it's a wonderful trilogy. I have no doubt that it's going to continue to be a wonderful trilogy. Moving on now to the tetralogy, or Book of Four. I would have called this quartet, but tetralogy. So the book series that I have, there's probably a number of book series that we could put on here, though I'm going to take this time to talk about one that I love dearly, and that is the Wingfeather Saga. I've posted about this on Twitter. I think I've talked about it a time or two on this channel. It is comprised of on the edge of the dark sea of darkness, North or Be Eaten, The Monster in the Hollows, and then the final book in that, which is The Warden and the Wolf King. Now this is a 4-book series, or a tetralogy, written by Andrew Peterson. Not a debut book, he had written other books, but a debut fantasy series. And I love this series. I read it back towards the end of 2020, and it just blew me away. Now it is a middle-aged, middle-grade read. However, what you find a coming-of-age story that is gripping. You find it very much character first. I know there's a lot of people who they look for books and look for a series that would be categorized as character first, and this absolutely is a character first series if I've ever seen one. You take this family, 3 siblings specifically, also a mother and a grandfather, and you take this family and it just invests, it dives into their lives and explains things, and you find new friends, you find family that you didn't know was there, and all sorts of things. Just a wonderful, wonderful book series. There's stories of redemption here, stories of forgiveness, people who were biased to certain things, let those things go and are reformed. You have bravery, overcoming fear, overcoming struggles, overcoming even mental health is talked about in this series, and it is wonderful. I'm going to talk about it for a long time to come. Nobody may listen, but I'm going to talk about this particular series. I love this series. So that is my entrance on the tetralogy. Now, number 5, favorite pentalogy. The one that I have chosen for the favorite pentalogy, book of 5, series of 5, is The Chronicles of Prydain by Lloyd Alexander. This was a series I read. If I read the Chronicles, the Wingfeather saga towards the end of 2020, I probably read The Chronicles of Prydain a little early. I don't know about the beginning, but probably the middle of 2020 I read The Chronicles of Prydain, and it's something that stuck with me. I loved Taran. At least that's how I had pronounced his name. It takes you through his struggles, his journey, his life, and it's also a coming-of-age story because you follow him through several years of his life, starting at a boy's age, and moving on up in years, and see what happens with him. And there's quests, and there's missions, and there's romance, and there's all sorts of things that is very wonderful to read about in the Chronicles of Prydain. So that is what I would enter for my pentalogy. Then my favorite hexalogy. Well, I haven't quite completed this, but it is 6 books. The Earthsea, this says Earthsea Trilogy. This is the first 3 books. As you can see, that's not even very long, but it is pretty small writing, if you can tell that. Anyway, but there are 3 other books. This is all I've read so far, and there is a special edition of the 6 books. It's huge. In fact, right now, if you keep up with Philip Chase and his channel, he's reading through it right now. The particular edition that he has, I want that. That's one of my next buys that I want to, one of my next purchases I want to make, so I can have the other 3 books of that particular series. Wonderful series. Ursula K. Le Guin, there's no question of the contributions that she's made to the fantasy genre, science fiction as well. So that is what I would put for that. My favorite heptalogy, or 7 book series. Well, I have a couple here. Number 1, The Chronicles of Narnia. How can we talk about a 7-book series without talking about The Chronicles of Narnia? C.S. Lewis, just chef's kiss, superb, wonderful fantasy. A lot of people stay away from it, maybe because of some of the religious aspects, and they are there. They're supposed to be there, but I think that you can enjoy it in spite of that. It's just a wonderful, wonderful series. You can really escape. We talk about escapism. You can really escape off into the world of Narnia as you journey through those books. And also, Harry Potter. The 7-book series. I'm looking up at it right now. I have so many books, I didn't have enough space to get all of these series with me, but the Harry Potter series, again, last year I read it for the first time. I was one of those guys who I didn't read it when it was coming out and popular, though I was around while that happened. I didn't read it. I watched the movies, and then I came back years later and read the books. And it's true what they say: the books are always better than the movies. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. There's no question of why it's a classic. It is wonderful. All right, now, Octology. I have not read any Octologies, but I do have 5 books of one that is an Octology, which is the Witcher series. I have a friend that just read this first, The Last Wish. He said it was very good, and he recommended I read it, so I have the first 5 books, but I have not read it yet. But if I'm going to enter an Octology, this would be the one. I really don't know many more to add. I have more investigating to do in order to be able to find out what there is. So next is my favorite Ennealogy, which is Book of 9 series. And again, I have not read a Book of 9 series of 9 books. But Ben, on his channel, when he presented this was one of the series that he presented that he had read. Well, I'm going to present it that I would like to read it, and I plan on reading it, which is The Expanse. I listened to Mike from Mike's Book Reviews talk about it, and others talk about that particular book series. In fact, I started watching, I believe have completed, it's been a little while now, I may have completed the first series on Amazon Prime. I've either completed it or I'm up to the last episode. I can't remember. But anyway, very good, and I will look forward to reading that particular series. Moving on now to my favorite, Decalogy. Have not read a Decalogy yet, but one that I've already purchased the first book and plan on reading more is, well, this is The Gardens of the Moon, which is the first book of Malazan, Book of the Fallen. I do plan on getting to this. In fact, if you saw here recently, I put on Twitter, I have a few different options that you could vote in a poll of what series I needed to read next. This was one of them, and this stayed ahead most of the time. And then old Song of Ice and Fire beat it out at the end. So anyway, but I do plan on getting to this, and so this would be the series of 10 books that I would like to get to, my Decalogy. Finally, we've reached a favorite mega series, and I do have several on here that I want to talk about, or a few. First of all, Realm of the Elderlings. Now, I've not completed the Realm of the Elderlings, though I am 4 books deep into this wonderful series by Robin Hobb. Here's 2 of them right now. In fact, my next read is Mad Ship. I read Live Ship last month, the beginning of last month, and I was blown away at the character work. If you've heard any reviews, anybody talk about Live Ship Traders, they talk about character work, or the entire series of Realm of the Elderling. Character work, character work, character work, and that's what I love. That's what I look for. Plot is wonderful. I do want plot. In fact, I kind of got bogged down in the 3rd book a little bit of Assassin's Quest, but the character work was so wonderful, it didn't matter that much to me. I still enjoyed it. So the Realm of the Elderlings, that would be a mega series that I want to get to. And the next, you may be thinking I'm going to say The Wheel of Time. Well, let's talk about that. I tried The Wheel of Time. I hopped on the wheel and it spit me out. That's what happened. I got 3 books into it. I've read the first 2 books and I started on the 3rd book, and I just came to a conclusion. I realized I don't care about the characters. The one that I couldn't stand the most was the main character. And so anyway, I decided that it may be, I took a break for several months from the Realm of the Elderlings, and I went back to started again on the 3rd book, and same thing. And I said, you know what, it's time to move on, and I DNF'd that. So that's not on this list. But what is on this list is the Dresden Files. I'm 3 books into the Dresden Files. I've read the first 3, and I'm about to start the 4th. So probably summer. In fact, the next book I have to read is Summer Night, and I'll probably read that during the summer, and among hopefully some others as well, but that will be one of the ones I read during the summer. So Dresden Files. Now, I'll say about Dresden Files, I wish, my feelings on it so far, and you may tell me that this doesn't happen, no spoilers, just something about Dresden's character. I wish he would get over this junior high sense of humor, of the world is ending, I'm about to die. Look at that woman. I don't understand. I don't get that. That is the one thing that is making me cringe about the Dresden Files. The story is wonderful. The magic, everything. It's wonderful. This is my first series of what you call urban fantasy. Wonderful. That one thing about Dresden, it just keeps irking me, and I hope maybe as the books continue, he grows out of that. You may tell me he does. You may tell me he doesn't, but I'm hoping he does. And the last thing I'll say on this mega series, I hope to read, as I've been reading Bernard Cornwell, the Warlord Chronicles, I have been eyeing the Saxon Tales. I did watch the first season of, I'm forgetting what it's called, the Saxon Tales on Netflix. That's not what it's called, but it's based off the Saxon Tales. I've watched the first season, Uhtred, Son of Uhtred, and I enjoyed it. I loved it. It was entertaining. It was action-packed, and I want to read the books. But I have so many series that I need to get to, that I want to get to, that I'm trying not to add more series on top of series on top of series. I've already done that. In fact, what I was going to do for this particular video, instead of recording this one, I was going to record, here's all the series that I'm in the middle of. Help me, because I have a problem. However, I am going to be finishing up a few of those trilogies, at least, during the summer and after the summer, and so I may have room to breathe a little bit and move some other directions. But anyway, and as far as books like the Dresden Files, there's no pressure here. I'm not looking to speed through the series. One book a month or even less, one book every 2 or 3 months is going to be fine for me for a while on that. But this is my series book series tag. Now, I know the way these things generally work is you do it, you're tagged, you do it, you tag other people. However, have you looked at Ben's tag list? I think he covered everybody I know and more people I don't know on BookTube. So I'm not sure who else to tag. So if you're watching this and you're not tagged, you are it. You now go ahead and do it, because I don't know anybody else to tag. So anyway, thank you. This has been fun. It was challenging to come up with all of these, but it was also fun. Thank you, Ben, and I hope you will also, others will do the tag. Thank you. Go read books.